My name is Matt Nishi. I've been a carpenter for 14 years, and I've finally started to manage job sites on my own. Today, after finishing work, I came home, dragging my exhausted body. Standing in front of my house's sliding door, I close my eyes and regulate my breathing. Hearing my mill's screams and the sound of something breaking from inside, I feel as if my heart is being eroded by a dark mist. I'd been shaking off the sawdust and dust from my worn work clothes in front of the house to kill time. But it's probably reached its limit. The cries of my mill are getting louder, and the longer I dawdle here, the fewer dishes will have left in the house. I place my sweaty hand on the sliding door. I'm home. 80% of the time, it's my father-in-law with dementia who causes a commotion, usually in the living room. To ensure my mother-in-law, who does the housework, can keep an eye on him, his caregiver's bed is placed in the Japanese-style room connected to the living room, making sure my voice could carry over the large noises and screams. Not to be drowned out, I shouted from the depth of my belly as I walked through the about 6 feet long hallway from the entrance to the living room. Instantly, the noises stop. After confirming that, I quickly rushed into the living room. Matt, you're back already. That was quick, my father-in-law said, smiling in the middle of the room scattered with glass shards. Next to him, my mother-in-law, who had been crouching, visibly relaxed her shoulders. Her face might as well have had "I'm relieved now" written all over it. We try to keep the living room as clear of objects as possible, in case my father-in-law gets agitated. I pulled out a watch from my tool pouch to check the time. I finished work at 7, and it took me an hour and 15 minutes to get home. It seems I've been killing time in front of the house for over 30 minutes. My watch tells me it's about to be 9 o'clock. Do you know what time it is now? I whisper, glancing at my mother-in-law, who slowly shakes her head. What's that, Matt? Speak up, I can't hear you. Just saying I'm sorry for being late, I reply, giving a small nod to make sure my father-in-law doesn't notice. You shouldn't contradict a patient with dementia. Agreeing, empathizing, and aligning with them, then gently guiding them towards the correct action is the right approach. It was a spring day, a year after I started living in this house, the childhood home of my wife, Sarah Smith. The day my father-in-law was diagnosed with dementia, that was one of the things the doctor taught us. Growing up with a carpenter father, I learned about different types of wood sooner than my multiplication tables, and how to use a plane before I could do a backflip. By the time I was old enough to graduate from wearing a backpack, I had no doubt I would become a carpenter. In fact, I never considered any other path. So, I started working smoothly as a carpenter, and met my father-in-law, Jack Smith. He was the one giving work to my dad, who ran a small construction business. My father-in-law is the owner of Smith Renovation Company, a well-known figure in this region. Hardly anyone doesn't know him. 90% of the jobs my dad took were from Smith Renovation Company. Despite being the CEO, my father-in-law, who values visiting sites personally, took me under his wing. That's how I was introduced to Sarah, and without any problems or obstacles, we were able to get married. That was 5 years ago. Over the course of a year from that point, the symptoms of dementia progressed steadily. Too steadily, in fact. Not only days of the week and dates, but at worst times, he couldn't recognize me or even my mother-in-law. I've spent 4 out of 5 years of marriage caring for someone with dementia. Of course, there's no time or room to even think about having children. Sarah has probably given up on that idea too. Looking back, it might have progressed too smoothly, I mused, while watching over my father-in-law, who seems to be in a deep sleep with no sign of waking up. Probably due to his medication, my mother-in-law and I start cleaning up the shattered glass. From a few feet away, where she's crouched down, my mother-in-law's back looks significantly thinner than it did over the last 4 years. Despite my whisper being so quiet it's doubtful it could be heard, she quickly lifted her head, as if checking whether my father-in-law had woken up. I too glance over at my father-in-law, wrapped in his blanket. He was breathing in a steady rhythm under the white comforter. "That's not true," she said. My mother-in-law replied in a voice that was almost a sigh, a whisper. Normally, sons-in-law aren't keen on moving into their wife's family home, are they? I did think changing my last name would be a hassle. But since I wasn't officially becoming a son-in-law, and it was just about living together, it really wasn't a burden for me at all, I responded. "That's right, back then, Matt, you didn't complain even once. Instead, you were thanking us," she recalled. Her back shook. It seems she was laughing, remembering those times. "I'm sorry, it was all because I asked you to," she said. "No, I owe my father-in-law more than I could ever repay. It wasn't Sarah who asked me to live together in this house without officially becoming a son-in-law. It was my mother-in-law. When Sarah and I decided to get married, my father-in-law's behavior was causing turmoil. He would cancel business deals decided the day before, claiming he couldn't remember them. Overturn decisions made in management meetings. Start rampaging or crying like a baby when confronted, becoming utterly unmanageable. But he himself couldn't remember any of his actions. I agreed to move in without hesitation. To be honest, I never imagined it would be this hard. Sarah, what could she be doing at this time? My mother-in-law muttered, standing up after wrapping the collected glass shards in newspaper. The remaining fragments can't be vacuumed, so we have no choice but to use duct tape to pick them up. Sarah needs her breaks too. She's at home all day, so if she stretches her wings a bit, it actually makes me feel more at ease, I said. My mother-in-law's wrinkled lips opened and closed several times as if she wanted to say something. But in the end, all she said was, "That's true." Before the sun rose, I slipped into my work clothes. I folded the quilt and picked it up. Looking over at the bed placed beside me, there's Sarah, asleep without even removing her makeup. Staring at her face, messed up with mascara and foundation for a while, her eyelids slowly began to open. "Did I wake you?" "No, I woke up because my head was hurting." "Hangover?" "Maybe. Can you grab me some water from my bag?" Following her slender arms stretched out, I placed the quilt back on the floor and took a water bottle out of Sarah's bag. "What time did you get back?" I didn't notice at all. I sat on the bed to be on the same level as Sarah. After chugging from the bottle and swallowing a few times, Sarah let out a sigh and said, "Does the time matter?" Still looking at Sarah, I searched for the right words. Sarah noticed my gaze and clicked her tongue silently. She yawned once and burrowed into the quilt, as if she was running away from me. "Sarah, I don't want to nag, but..." "Then don't say anything. The time between you leaving and me coming home is the most critical for Dad, right? The doctor said it too. Patients tend to become more sensitive at night. I'm not saying don't go out to unwind, but at least until I get back." Enough, you're so annoying. What time do you think it is? Lecturing your wife in the early morning, Matt? That's so sexist. Sarah, raising her voice, threw a pillow at me from under the quilt. Not knowing how to bridge the growing gap between us any further, I placed the thrown pillow next to Sarah and left the room. I'm off. A take care from Sarah is something I haven't heard in a long time. Even though winter is nearing, wearing long sleeves on the job site leaves me drenched in sweat. Though it was chilly when I left the house in the morning, by lunch break, if I don't change, I couldn't possibly continue working. I was rummaging through my backpack for a change of work clothes behind the truck loaded with lumber, when someone's hand landed on my shoulder. "Looking good, aren't you?" Mr. White, Executive Vice President, Mr. Johns, long time no see. I stood up and gave a slight bow. "Let's skip the formalities. You're the son of the president, after all, which pretty much makes you my son too, right, Mr. Johns?" Mr. White, the Executive Vice President, grinned, and Mr. Johns, the Vice President, nodded lightly. Inwardly, I clicked my tongue. Both of them had come to this sawdust-filled site wearing expensive suits. My father-in-law would never have done such a thing. He always considered the homes we were building from the same perspective as the workers on site. Mr. White started to search his chest pocket. "The site is no smoking, you know." To my muttered remark, Mr. White forced a smile and said, I know, just kidding." To these two, a home is nothing more than a business tool. Neither Mr. White nor Mr. Johns even glance at the building under construction behind them. We're too busy for a mere formality of a walkthrough to take up our time, both me and the site. When my father-in-law's condition worsened, Mr. White and Mr. Johns came to our house, and the five of us, including my mother-in-law and Sarah, had a discussion. Running the business is now challenging for the current state of your father-in-law. If the outside world realizes he has dementia, we could lose trust, Mr. White had said. Indeed, Smith Remodeling, which grew significantly on the trust of the local community and prides itself on being community-focused, relies too heavily on the presence of my father-in-law as its president. It's probably more about trust in my father-in-law than in the company itself. If such a man were to step back from management, the decline of Smith Remodeling would be clear. For now, the plan was to keep my father-in-law officially as the president while promoting Mr. White and Mr. Johns, preparing for the time when my father-in-law's condition might worsen. If my father-in-law's symptoms could be alleviated, he could return to his position as president. At that time, I thought it was a good plan, and accepted it. Of course, my mother-in-law was also thankful to Mr. White and Mr. Johns for trying to protect the company. By the time I realized it was a mistake, it was too late. Mr. Johns, noticing me silently staring at them, straightens his collar and faces me. "Is there anything you're having trouble with?" Mr. Johns, with his graying eyebrows furrowed, asked me. Though I think to myself they wouldn't consider any solutions even if I mentioned any problems. But from my position, they're major clients. I can't just dismiss them outright. Swallowing a sigh, I open my mouth to speak. The quality of the lumber has dropped. There are clear signs of bug damage. Did you stop the termite treatment? Wasn't that your selling point? Mr. White gives me a look as if I'm being a nuisance, with an expression that says, "Oh, brother. You know, I think we've discussed this before, but we're currently short on funds. With the soaring cost of lumber and covering for the president's duties, it's not easy. And how many people are you using to fill the gap for what my father-in-law used to do alone?" That just shows how much he was burdened, doesn't it? Mr. White's face twisted noticeably. He suddenly became visibly agitated, as if he was holding back the urge to yell at me. "If you weren't Sarah's husband, a small, local contractor like you would have been cut off by now. It's only because Mrs. Brown insisted that we're still connected. Just remember, I could ruin your family's business with a single word." He must be desperate not to be heard by the workers around us. In a low, almost growling voice, Mr. White bares his fangs at me, asking if I had any troubles, just to end up like this. I don't have time to play along with these two's facade. Trying to leave before saying anything more unnecessary, I glanced at Mr. Johns next to me. "Mr. Johns." I widened my eyes in surprise. I had assumed Mr. Johns would wear the same expression as Mr. White. However, Mr. Johns had his eyes closed, his eyebrows furrowed. His lips were so tightly pressed they turned white. Looking at his face, enduring something, I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. I got home late. Taken up by the time with the two of them, I kept recalling Mr. Johns's expression during work. By the time I arrived in front of the house, it was past 10 at night. Standing in front of the door, I felt uneasy due to the unusual silence of the house. I shook my head, trying to dispel the bad feeling. My father-in-law might have already gone to bed. Surely, that must be it. Trying to make as little noise as possible, I slowly slid the door open. The entrance, the hallway, and the living room at the back were all still lit. Dad. In the water-soaked hallway in front of the entrance, Dad was lying on the ground. "Mom, what are you doing?" Dad's collapsed. I hurriedly kicked off my shoes and, not caring that my socks were getting wet, rushed over to Dad. In the back, Mom was calmly wiping the floor, wringing out a cloth over a bucket. Without even a glance at Dad lying on the floor, she continued to wipe the floor calmly, ignoring my calls. "It's okay, he's just sleeping." Mom's voice was devoid of any warmth. I slapped my cheeks with both hands. After taking several deep breaths to calm down, I observed Dad again with a clearer mind. Upon closer inspection, Dad was breathing in a regular, sleeping rhythm. "Mom, what happened?" While continuing to wipe the floor, Mom started to speak. Today, he started saying it was an experiment to see what would happen if there was flooding. "Really, he's only interested in architecture," she said. Though she tried to smile, tears were streaming down from the corners of her eyes. Drip by drip, the tears Mom wiped from the floor fell, wetting it once again. "Mom, please rest, I'll take care of the rest," I said. I carried the wet Dad and took him to the living room. A change of clothes had been prepared on the table there. Mom must have intended to bring Dad here by herself and change his clothes. But she couldn't lift him. Imagining Mom waiting alone for either me or Sarah to return made my heart constrict. I took off Dad's wet clothes, dried his body with the towel that had been prepared, and dressed him in new pajamas. "Dad, you've gotten lighter," I remarked. Back when we first met, Dad could easily carry lumber that was too heavy for me to lift. He would laugh off my frustration, roughly ruffle my hair, and tell me, "Eat up and get stronger." Even after laying him in bed and covering him with a quilt, Dad showed no signs of waking. Tears fell onto Dad's face. Wondering whose tears they were, I touched my own cheek and found it wet. "Dad," I whispered. I crouched down, clinging to Dad's thinning arm. "You've lost weight, haven't you?" Mom, seeing my face for the first time in half a year, stared intently at me. Between work at the site and taking care of Dad, I'd been stretched thin. If she hadn't called saying she needed to talk, I would have wanted to visit the site today as well. Mom's words from last night echoed in my ears. Thinking of going to the site even on my day off, I'm just like Dad. I might only be interested in home too. "Make sure you eat properly, okay? You're staying for dinner today, right?" "No, I'm heading back, I'm a bit swamped right now." "Did you take on that much of a rush job?" Even though I live with the Smith family, I'm actually part of my family's construction business. All the work volume and details are well known. As much as they're my parents, Dad's condition must not be noticed. Inwardly clicking my tongue, I hastily searched for a new topic. Speaking of which, where's Dad? Is today's conversation something we shouldn't let Dad hear? I quenched my thirst with the barley tea Mom had served. As I asked hurriedly, Mom seemed to remember something, clapped her hands saying, "Oh, that's right," and left the living room. When she returned, Mom was holding a file. "What's that?" I leaned in to look at the file she spread out on the table. Looking at a table where numbers were summarized by month, I realized what my mom was worried about. Deficits like this have happened before, haven't they? Back then, we had an explanation from Mr. Smith about the prospects of recovery. He told us that business would slow down for about 2 years, but after that, we were expecting a big contract. He even showed us the management data, but this time, not only is there no explanation, we can't even get a call back. Leaning on the table, gazing at the ledger with a troubled look, my mom muttered, "Do you know something I don't know? When your father-in-law is home, he never talks about the company." This has been the case even before the symptoms worsened. While at home, my father-in-law would talk about the structure of the house or his vision for the future of the construction industry. But he never discussed the management side of things. I think that's why I could live in that house. Even though we're family, to Smith Renovations, I'm an outsider. It wouldn't make sense to talk about profits. So, what's the main issue? You didn't want to turn me into a spy, did you? Asking this with a sigh, my mom looked uneasy, avoiding my gaze. Then she simply said, "I'm sorry," with a frown. Having married Mr. Smith's daughter, it feels like a betrayal, but you can't live on loyalty and sentiment alone, right? My mom kept beating around the bush, and I tilted my head in confusion. Even before, not all our work came from Smith Renovations, right? I thought you were asking if there were other companies that could offer us work. Or is that not the case? Some other company has offered us an exclusive contract, saying they'd give us more than double the work Smith does. She said, swallowing hard, without looking me in the eye. What are you talking about? You know how much Smith Renovations has favored us over the years. I know, but the way things are now, we should take on work from other companies as a stopgap and wait for Smith Renovations to recover. Once Smith bounces back, we can go back to how things were. Isn't that okay? My mom quietly shook her head. I took another look at the ledger that was still open on the desk. I can't believe it's such a desperate deficit. That's just looking at this year alone. Mom flipped through a few pages of the file and pointed to the top of a page. Take a look here. 5 years ago. The page my mom had opened was the ledger from the year my father-in-law's dementia symptoms began to show. I slowly read through 5 years' worth of performance. Even if the year-to-year changes were mild, compared to 5 years ago, it was clear that my family's business was in decline. If things continue at this pace, we might last a few more years. But if work suddenly stops, we won't be able to recover. There's no guarantee another company will come along with a similar offer if we turn this down, right? And there's no guarantee Smith will recover, is there? My mom's intense gaze seemed to see right through me. I remembered, even from childhood, I could never hide anything from her. I think it's a good company. Not as big as Smith, but they've recently expanded into this area from other regions. They said that old-fashioned construction shops like ours know the community best and approached us. What does Dad say? What's his opinion? My mom's chatter stopped abruptly. Her gaze fell to the desk and she shrugged her shoulders. You haven't talked about it. Such an important matter. You weren't planning on making me persuade Dad, were you? That's not it. I just wanted to hear what Matt thought first. She hastily looked up, meeting my glare. I let out a deliberate heavy sigh and stood up. Do whatever you want. You know how much I owe my father-in-law. It wasn't my dad who raised me when I was inexperienced. It was my father-in-law. As I was leaving the living room, I turned back to look at my mom, who sat there saying nothing. Seeing her hunched over and crying made the smoldering heat in my stomach flare up. If you decide to betray my father-in-law and become exclusive to that company, I will never come here again. I want my name removed from the construction shop. As far as Dad and Mom are concerned, they can live as if they never had a child. Matt, you would go that far. When you joined that company, that's when you cut ties with me. As I closed the living room door, the thank you for everything I muttered probably wasn't heard by my mom. Not really feeling like going home, I ended up visiting the buildings I was responsible for. A 2-story house, an old farmhouse that had been renovated into a single-story home, and a small 2-story apartment building. I could hear laughter coming from each house, and I found myself naturally smiling. The last one I visited was the first house I was in charge of. That's where I met my father-in-law, got yelled at, and praised countless times. I wish I could see my father-in-law's work again. Just once would be enough. Just once more, I want to see my father-in-law with that serious look in his eyes, thinking about the people who live there. Guess it's time to head back. The sky had turned orange before I knew it. Somehow managing to move my stiff legs, I started my way home. I'm home. By the time I got home, stars were already floating in the sky. Still, it was earlier than my usual return. Thinking it was about time for my father-in-law to be having dinner, I quietly opened the living room door to avoid startling him. Mom, is something wrong? There, I found my mother-in-law slumped over the living room table, her posture defeated. Her hand was tightly clutching her smartphone. Where's Dad? His bed, visible from the living room, was unoccupied. Of course, there was no sign of him in the living room or the kitchen. He needs assistance from either me or my mother-in-law to take a bath. And with his condition, going up to the second floor is impossible. A dry gust of air passed through my throat. Suddenly, it felt like sweat burst from every pore in my body. I don't know where he went. My mother-in-law's voice came out strained. Just for a moment, I dozed off. I was so tired, I thought it would be okay just for a little while. As she spoke, she leaned forward on the table, her body shaking. Occasionally, I could hear the sound of sniffling. I dashed out of the house, heading in the opposite direction from the one I had walked earlier. Swinging my head left and right, I searched for my father-in-law's back, continuing to run. He's not here, he couldn't have gone far. Before I knew it, the lights in the surrounding houses had gone out. Glancing at my wristwatch, I saw it was about to cross into the next day. I stopped and noticed a pain in my throat. My throat had dried up at some point, now feeling sore and irritated. A vending machine, there. That car's in the way. I could see the top of a vending machine at the entrance of a small park. But a black car was parked in such a way that it obscured the vending machine. Hesitating a bit, but aware there were no convenience stores nearby, I approached a car, rubbing my throat. Due to the backlight from the moon and street lights, I could see someone inside the car but couldn't make out who it was. If it's a young couple, that would be the worst. Better pretend not to notice and quickly move away. I was hurrying past, trying to get a glance inside the car, when I stopped. I could feel the blood drain from my entire body. In the moment the street light flickered on, I could see inside the car. Mr. White and Sarah were leaning close, smiling at each other. A different kind of cold sweat than what I had felt earlier started to flow from all over my body. I ran back the way I had come. I just wanted to get as far away from the car as possible. I ran faster than I ever thought I could. In a place like this, I hadn't noticed it before. No, maybe it had moved. Let's go home, Dad. Approaching my father-in-law who was looking up at a nearly completed house, I called out to him. "Oh, Matt, what's up? Why are you so out of breath?" Even though I had stopped, my breathing wouldn't calm down. The scene I had just witnessed was swirling in my mind. Look, it's turned into such a magnificent house. Dad, this isn't a Smith renovations site. We could get sued for trespassing. Matt, you're saying something strange. I recognize this design. You shouldn't contradict a patient with dementia. Even as I continued to chant this mantra in my mind, I couldn't find the words to affirm my father-in-law. Please, Dad, let's go home. No, not yet. I need to give instructions to the craftsman first, or I won't be able to rest easy back home. Please, Dad, let's go home. Matt, are you crying? My father-in-law's thick palm rested on my head, then roughly tousled my hair. What's wrong? If there's something troubling you, you can always tell me. The hand that continued to stroke my head held the same warmth as the day I first met my father-in-law. Yet, when I looked up, the man before me was not in his work clothes, and looked considerably thinner and tired. No helping it, let's go home today. Continuing to sob, all I could do was nod to my father-in-law, who said this and embraced my shoulder. The sliding door made a small, rattling noise as it slowly opened. You're late. With the newly risen sun at her back, Sarah appeared, and I called out to her. Sarah, startled with such force she almost jumped, clutched her chest, and closed the sliding door behind her with her back hand. Matt, what are you doing? You scared me. What were you doing, Sarah, staying up until this morning? Sitting on the entryway step, I looked up at Sarah. The whiff of cigarette smoke that floated by was the same scent Mr. White carried. I stood up and took Sarah's hand. What's wrong? You seem off, Matt. Are you tired? Sarah, when did you start smoking? I pretended to sniff the hand I had grabbed, bringing it close to my nose. Suddenly, Sarah's face turned bright red. If you knew, you should have just said so. Don't talk like you're testing me. Sarah raised her voice and slammed her bag against me. Papers spilled out of the bag onto the floor. Seeing Sarah scramble to pick them up, I quickly reached out and grabbed the documents first. Merger, contract. My hands trembled holding the documents. As Sarah tried to snatch the documents from me, I began to read through the contents written there. Being a carpenter has its perks. Despite my being rattled, stopping Sarah was something I could manage single-handedly. Sarah, your father has no idea about this, right? The documents Sarah dropped revealed that Smith Renovations was agreeing to a buyout. Sarah, rubbing her wrist I had just released, said, "This has nothing to do with you, Matt. So, the signature field for your father is empty. Meaning the contract isn't finalized yet, right, Sarah? Don't tell me you tricked this out of Mr. White because, Matt, you're really an idiot." Perhaps Sarah got close to Mr. White to save Smith Renovations. I clung to the sliver of hope that remained within me. Sarah snorted at me. "Getting Dad to sign tomorrow, forgetting about today, is easy. But being alone with him is hard, right? Mr. White trusted me with a big task." "What are you saying? Wake up. Do you realize what you're doing? Betraying your own father. That's betraying. That sounds terrible. It's Dad's fault for forgetting on his own." Sarah chuckled deep in her throat. "Why? How can you do such a thing? I'm fed up with this family. Dad's always focused on his work. Mom's always concerned about Dad, and even you, Matt, who should have put me first, only married me because of Dad, right?" Sarah, who had been laughing defiantly until moments ago, now had her face contorted in pain. She hugged her shoulders and started to crouch down on the spot. "Mr. White is different. He thought of me first, even going as far as to start a company for me. When I said I hated my father, he thought of ways to take over the company. When I complained about being looked down upon as the daughter who could do nothing, he trusted me with such an important task, saying only I could do it. Hold on, Mr. White started a separate company. You were too busy taking care of Dad to notice, weren't you, Matt?" Looking up at me, Sarah's eyes were red. Tears lingered at the corners of her eyes as she glared at me. "But if that's the case, it's strange to leave your father's name on it. It would be quicker to just take over the president's position. That's why I'm telling you, you don't understand, Matt." Sarah staggered to her feet and turned her back on me. "Taking over a weakened Dad's company isn't interesting. It wouldn't mean anything unless Dad is brought to despair, realizing his own power wasn't enough." Thus, Sarah spoke with a powerless back and quietly left the house. As the sliding door closed, I could hear it shut, and I collapsed to my knees. The cobblestones hit my knees, but I felt no pain. The documents I had seen earlier were dated for tomorrow. They must have planned to get the signature done today and announce it tomorrow. Staying by my father-in-law's side for today is one thing, but I can't keep it up forever. What should I do? How can I protect my father-in-law, Smith Renovations? Could it be Mr. White was the one who brought this up to Mom? I felt a chill run down my spine. Did I fail to protect anyone? My father-in-law, my dad, my mom, Sarah? I felt the strength drain from my body. I hugged my head and knees, crouching down on the spot. That's when it happened. "Matt, what's wrong?" Warmth touched my back. When I slowly looked up, there was my father-in-law, smiling softly and yet strongly. "Dad, you shouldn't be up. I need to get him back to his room." I tried to stand up on my knees, but I couldn't muster the strength. "You did well, enduring all this alone. I'm sorry." "Dad." There was a light in Dad's eyes. Not the vacant stare or tired expression I saw last night. Before I could grasp the situation, Dad showed me a small black device. "All right, let's go take down the company." And then, Smith Renovations was thrown into chaos. Before Mr. White and Sarah could act, Dad made his move. A voice recorder capturing Sarah's confession circulated within the company, and Dad resigned as president that day. I had been aware of Mr. White's plans for quite some time. Money was moving that didn't add up, and I had been gathering evidence but lacked a clinching piece, so I set a trap. It took longer than expected, Dad said, laughing heartily. Indeed, Dad no longer wandered at night, nor did he sprinkle water around the house. I can't believe Mr. Johns was in on it with Dad. It was Mr. Johns who had leaked Sarah's confession to the company. He had been acting to keep an eye on Mr. White while Dad was away. Less than half a year after Dad resigned, the staff and shares of Smith Renovations had dwindled to less than half. Mr. White, who rushed to buy out the company before its value decreased, must be regretting taking on unwanted baggage by now. And I, even after officially divorcing Sarah, still live in the Smith household. I was watching Dad and Mr. Johns play chess in the sunlit veranda. Then, I felt a gentle nudge on my elbow. "Matt, you can't afford to relax like this, can you?" Mr. Johns's daughter, Mary, pushing up her thin-frame glasses, confronted me. The ledger Mary spread open read RI Renovations. It wasn't just Mr. White who had secretly established a company. Dad and Mr. Johns had also prepared another company to welcome those who left Smith Renovations. That was RI Renovations. With Mr. Johns's daughter, Mary, as the president, they managed to keep the company's existence hidden from Mr. White. And my name was placed in the executive position. After being made to act for 5 years, I'd say I deserve some reward. My mother-in-law, coming in with the laundry, laughed in disbelief. "What are you talking about? You look like you were enjoying yourself." "Dad, what are you saying?" The thought of deceiving Matt and his parents, it's been killing me inside. I later found out that Mom had gotten the story from Mary. I was the only one blissfully unaware, riding the emotional roller coaster. "Matt, are you listening?" "Of course, I'm listening. No matter how tough it gets, we can't compromise on the quality of our materials." Mary sighed deeply at my response. "I can't believe it. You really only think about the work site." "Well, the company exists because of the work site, right?" "No, you have it backwards. We can work on the site because the company exists." Mary and I both frowned, neither willing to give an inch. Then, a warm laugh poured over us. "Look, Johns. Yay, it's like looking at our past selves." Smith really did always go on about the work site. Though, from my point of view, Mr. Johns was the same. My mother-in-law, spreading out the sheets she had brought in, let out an exaggerated sigh. Laughter fills the house. Is it really okay to be this happy? I held my chest, bursting with joy.